Yo, what's going on, boys? Welcome back to the stream, part of our essentially daily stream where we stream every single day during the week at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So, welcome back. Just give me a second. Let me just get set up here quickly, and we'll get right into the stream. So, since we spoke last time, well, yesterday, I should say, there hasn't really been too much news that has came out, but there's a couple things that I wanted to touch upon. But there we go. Mikey, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. I love your thumbnail. Yeah, I won't change it. Don't worry. I will not change my normal thumbnail. I know there's Drick is not accurate, and I know it's also missing Taporia, I think, in it, but I'll keep it. But thanks once again, Mikey, for becoming a channel member. But yeah, so ever since we talked yesterday, there's been a few things that came out. Oh, sorry. Let me update that. There we go. So the couple things that have came out is this: Junior Tafa versus Ibo Islam is off, with Junior Tafa having an injury that he had to pull out of. He had to pull out of the fight for. Definitely very kind of interesting, I guess. I know I criticized Junior Tafa a lot. I was actually going to put together a video talking about why he sucks. I guess I really go at Junior Tafa a lot, but he pulled out of the card, so there's no co-main event for UFC Perth. I don't know if they're going to add a fight to the card or not, but I just thought that was kind of funny. It doesn't really change anything in terms of the card, in my opinion. And a lot of people in the comments are saying cut him. I probably would agree, but whatever. What could you do? The other thing that I wanted to touch upon was Randy Brown is out, so now it's Gabriel Bonfim versus Jack Hermanson for UFC Rio. I think that's a pretty good fight, to be completely honest. So that's another good addition to UFC Rio. UFC Rio is honestly looking pretty good at this point. Saved himself, even though both kind of suck. Yeah, they definitely both do suck. It was kind of a hilarious fight because it was two fights. Talking about this fight, by the way, it was two guys that are both frauds in my opinion. I thought Junior Tafa was like literally the worst fighter in the UFC, but also Ibo Islam's not a good fighter either. So it's kind of funny that they matched them both up at as the co-main event of the Perth card when they both kind of suck. But yeah, and then the last bit of news that I wanted to touch upon is this, which is in kind of better news. César Almeida versus Ola Jacek are going up at the at the Apex card on December 13th. So that's a pretty fun fight. I always criticize the UFC about putting César Almeida and the Apex so often. I don't know why. He's a pretty fun fighter. He's just coming off like one of the knockouts of the year not too long ago in the Apex, of course, and now they're putting him back in the Apex. Makes no sense to me personally. Might as well put him in Rio or something like that, but they decided to put him in the Apex, and unfortunately, that's what we got. Juicy versus Lucas Tracy for the co-main event. Let's go. Sure. If he wants to call me out, I'll accept that one. But yeah, Armin versus Dan gonna happen for UFC Qatar. Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. I know Armin said himself that he thinks Paddy's gonna get the shot versus Ilia Topuria. So I'm assuming that means he's going to be fighting against Dan Hooker, considering all the rumors that we've seen. So welcome to the stream, by the way. But yeah, I do think it's probably going to happen for Qatar. I made a video today talking about why I think Armin should be fighting Ilia Topuria next. I really do feel like that. I think it just makes all the sense in the world. I get it. Armin Tsarukyan should have fought ever since his pullout in January. Completely get that, and it's completely fair. But when you look at the other two guys, and Justin Gaethje as well as Paddy Pimblett, I just don't think they deserve it, to be completely honest. And also, fighting Armin Tsarukyan fighting Ilia Topuria is going to answer a lot of questions. I've said this in a lot of my videos and live streams. I do think that Ilia Topuria is going to beat Armin Tsarukyan, but it would answer a lot of questions. A lot of fans are wondering how would Ilia Topuria do against a grappler, against a really high-level wrestler, and if he fought Armin, we would get answers to that. But kind of seems like we're not going to get that one, so it's kind of unfortunate, to be honest. Maybe another César loss, IDK, but could be pretty good. Yeah, we'll see. Ola Jacek looked pretty good in the Contender Series, but Almeida has also looked pretty good. I don't know. It's probably going to be a pretty fun striking affair. Both guys are pretty powerful in the feet and have pretty good striking. I would probably say Almeida has better striking than Ola Jacek at this point, but we haven't seen all that much yet from Ola Jacek. He was just on the Contender Series, and who knows how good it'll look in the UFC. But Early prediction, I think I probably go with Cesar, but it should be a fun one. And we'll see. We'll see how that one pans out. Um, but yeah. But but yeah, so in terms of news, that's really it. It has been a little bit of a slow news week lately for the UFC. We're kind of just waiting in between now and between the next card, which is UFC Perth that we were talking a little bit about. I just put out a video yesterday talking about the main event, Dominic Reyes versus Carlos Oberg, giving my predictions on that, my full in-depth predictions on that. So if you guys are interested, be sure to check that out. But the card itself is fine. As I said before, I'm curious to see if they're going to look to replace the co-main event with Junior Tafa and Ibo Islam, because if they don't, it's probably going to end up being Jack Jenkins versus Tavares, which is definitely not worthy of a co-main event. But I guess at the same time, neither was Junior Tafa and Ibo Islam. Honestly, I could see them throwing in Justin Tafa as the co-main event, and as he was scheduled to be on that same card in the prelims. So who knows? Is Hermanson moving down? Yeah, I guess he is. Yeah, that's interesting. Hermanson is coming off a brutal knockout loss in his last fight, so I guess he is moving down to welterweight. Yeah, I didn't even think about that in the moment, but yeah, you're right. He is moving down. But could be interesting. A lot of people criticize Hermanson's fighting style, and honestly, I do as well. Sometimes I feel like he kind of fights boring, but I don't know. It should be an interesting matchup. I mean, Hermanson is a good fighter, so it is a good step up in competition for Gabriel Bonfim. And Bonfim, in my opinion, in his last fight, he lost to Wonderboy Thompson, or should have lost to Wonderboy Thompson. So this will be interesting to see how he does against another pretty good fighter in Jack Hermanson. Ebo needs some more. Yeah, I would agree. I think the big problem with Ebo, though, is he was super aggressive in a lot of his performances, and we saw how he did in his loss against Cutelaba. And I think after that fight, he just overcorrected. Obviously, he was too aggressive in some of his previous fights. He kind of just thought he was so much better than everybody he was going up against. And honestly, he probably was, because he wasn't really fighting, great fighters, to say the least. But after that Cutelaba fight, I think it kind of overcorrected. He overcorrected himself, I should say. And then obviously in his last fight, we saw ridiculously slow-paced, low output sort of fight. So hopefully, well, I guess actually I was about to say hopefully he looks better in this one, but that fight is canceled. So I guess he's not even going to be on the card, and we'll see when he does make his return to the UFC. But yeah, potentially a move down could be in store for Ebo. I mean, Ebo is definitely like muscle bound, so I'm curious how that cut would be for him. But potentially could help him out. But in general, training at Tiger Muay Thai could potentially be a good move for him. I don't know. I think he just needs to get his confidence back. And I thought, as I said, I don't think Ebo's good to begin with, but I thought the UFC giving him a guy like Junior Tafa, which is somebody that Ebo probably would just go in there and knock out, would boost his confidence up once again, and he can, start to fight like he used to fight, I guess. But fights off. Yeah, let's the billion super green. Yeah, honestly, yeah. It is kind of like the Sergey Pavlovich syndrome. Sergey, it's so weird. After him knocking out literally everybody in the first round for a couple years or however long it was, literally every single fight ever since he got knocked out by Tom Aspinall has been a decision, I believe, which is kind of crazy. And I know he's won a couple of those fights. He won his last fight. He also won the fight before that. But it's kind of crazy that he's just going to decisions time in and time again for a guy who was literally just brawling in most of his fights. So yeah, it's a good point. It is kind of the Sergey Pavlovich syndrome, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know when Ebo's going to fight next. I'm assuming they're not going to re-add him to the card because the fight's canceled. So I'm assuming he's going to be on a different card, or I don't know. But whenever he does return, it'll be interesting to see how he returns from that horrible performance against Billy. Who even won that fight in the Billy one? Did they give it to Ebo? I think they gave it to Billy, right? Let's see. Ebo. Yeah, they gave it to Billy. That was probably one of the worst fights I've ever seen. Like, no exaggeration, that was insanely bad. I know there's been a lot of other like ridiculously bad fights, like Rose Namajunas, that fight back in the day, which was horrible, but that fight was just absolutely awful. Probably UFC Qatar, they give it to Billy. They give it to Billy. Yeah. I could see that for sure. then putting him on UFC Qatar, and that's coming up pretty soon. It's coming up. What is that? That's in November, I believe, right? So it's coming up relatively soon. So yeah, I could see that moving him to that card. I think Reyes is going to win by round 3 count. That's fair. Yeah. There definitely have been opportunities in the past. The time where Olberg did lose in the UFC when he got knocked out. He kind of was gassed alongside the cage, and his opponent was able to unload on him, pause, and find a finish. But yeah, I could see that. I think Dominic Reyes is going to win. I think if he's able to, I think if Olberg overextends himself at all, he's going to get countered. I don't think Olberg is necessarily that good of a striker. I think he's he kind of fights similarly to Izzy, but like a worse version of him with his leg kicks and jabs. But a worse version. I guess the main factor that gives me a lot of confidence for Dominic Reyes going into this is when you look at when Dominic Reyes was getting knocked out and he was getting finished, it was mostly because he was going up against guys that were super powerful and super athletic. But when you look now and you look at his matchup against Carlos Ulberg, I don't think he's either one of those things. Yes, you could knock guys out. Of course, he's done it in the past. But for the most part, he's not really that powerful or that dangerous for the most part. So I think because of that, it's not a bad stylistic matchup for Dominic Reyes. And Dominic Reyes has definitely proven to have better cardio than Carlos Ulberg. So there is a lot of factors. As I said, I put out a video breaking it down in depth. But I do think this is not a bad matchup for Dominic Reyes. And if he wins this one, he's going to get a title shot in his next fight. We'll see what happens for the other couple fights. Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev, as well as Yuri Prochazka and Khalil Roundtree. We'll see who the winners of those fights are. But there is a very real possibility that if Dominic Reyes beats Carlos Ulberg at UFC Perth, he could be fighting for the belt next. But at the very least, he'll be fighting for the belt in his next fight. So we'll see. We'll see how that all pans out. Need UFC 230 yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree. So that's the card for that's a card in December, right? Yeah. So I agree. I think probably what it's going to be, if I had to say, it's probably going to be Volkanovski versus Laurel Murphy for the main event, and then the co-main event is going to be Pantoja and Joshua Van. I'm assuming that's what the card's going to be. I mean, obviously we don't have any announcements or anything, but it just feels like that's what it's going to be. I would like to see Ilia Topuria on that card, but for whatever reason, I feel like Volkanovski is going to be the main event of that card, and Ilia Topuria will probably fight in January, February, or March of the year following. Ulberg just sucks, but I almost feel like, honestly, I kind of feel that, to be honest. But yeah, Ulberg lost to a very old and very slow Jan Blachowicz. Like, Jan Blachowicz is actually very underrated, and he is very good. But I didn't think he looked great in that fight, and Carlos Ulberg arguably lost. Not even arguably, he did lose that fight. It's just the judges were blind that night. So I was never high on Carlos Ulberg, but especially after that performance, I really wasn't either. So I just don't think Carlos is that good, to be honest. And as I said, really when Dominic Reyes is trouble, at least as of late, it's when he's running into guys that are super powerful, explosive, and most importantly, dangerous. But with Carlos Ulberg, I just don't really see that in his game. So we'll see. But who knows? I mean, Dominic Reyes doesn't have an amazing chin, so it can end at any point, unfortunately. But we'll see how it plays out. Main event probably Joshua Van Pantoja. If out of those two, it would probably be Volkanovski, Laurel Murphy as the main event, and the co-main event would be Van Pantoja. Honestly, in my opinion, I think the better fight by far would be Van and Pantoja. But the UFC is very rarely, if ever, going to have a 125-pound fight as the main event of any sort of pay-per-view. So in that sort of scenario, it would be Volkanovski as the main event. But we'll see. Yeah. That is true. So, and obviously Dominic Reyes does. So, yeah. MMA gods are cruel. Yeah. There's been a lot of unfortunate, things happening to some of our favorite fighters over the years. But we'll see. I'm definitely tuned in. I think it's pretty obvious everybody in chat and everybody in general is kind of rooting for Dominic Reyes here. He's such a great story. And obviously, after he got knocked out 3 times and everybody thought he was going to retire or should retire, to see him get back to the point where he's at today is pretty crazy to see. And as I said, he's 1 fight away from a title shot, 2 fights away from being the champion, which would be absolutely crazy considering where he was not too long ago. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Welcome from Brazil. If Merab and Pantoja win their next fight, it's time for the super. I completely agree. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Merab would welcome that sort of a fight. I just don't think Pantoja will. He said it multiple times. I mean, guys have different ways of defining greatness. And I guess for Pantoja, what he really wants to do is get as many title defenses as possible. It's unfortunate. I would love to see this fight. I think Merab versus Pantoja is like it's a super fight for hardcores. For casuals, maybe they don't even know who these people are. Maybe they know who Merab is, but they probably don't care about that sort of a fight that much. But for the hardcores, like this is the fight. It's such an amazing fight. Merab is honestly it appears to be somewhat unstoppable at bantamweight, and Pantoja is appearing to be pretty unstoppable at flyweight. And the thing is, both of these guys kind of have weapons to neutralize the other. So I do think this would be an amazing fight. Just unfortunately, I don't think Pantoja is ever going to want to move up. I don't know how many more title defenses he would need to decide to do that, but it just seems like at this point he's just not going to do it. But I hope he does do it. That would be an amazing fight. People be saying Ilya needs to fight. Yeah, I agree with that. I would personally like to see Topuria fight this year as well, or at least maybe January of next year. Just personal preference because I he's a fun fighter. But I do agree with that sentiment. I mean, not Topuria. Islam Makhachev obviously took absolutely no damage in his fight versus Volk in the second fight, and a lot of people were I think even Dana White was talking about Islam potentially making a quick turnaround because he took no damage, but obviously he did, and it took forever to come back. So yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's up to the fighters how long they want to take until they return. But the reason I personally want to see Topuria fight again this year is just because he's a fun fighter, and I would like to see how he looks against particular fighters. Like I would really like to see Ilya Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan in December. That's my personal preference, but it's seeming like that's not going to happen. Yes, caucus fighters are so inactive in the title. Yeah, it's true. It is true. It's Merab's actually. Yeah, I could see that honestly. Favoring Pantoja over Umar, I could see that. I mean, the thing with that specific matchup is Pantoja is dangerous both on the feet and on the ground, and also a kind of course, he doesn't fight exactly like Murat, but a similarity that both of them have is yes, Pantoja does look very gassed when he fights out there, but he continues to push forward. So I could see a matchup between Pantoja and Umar, where maybe early on it looks relatively competitive, but as the fight progresses, Pantoja is just constantly pushing forward, shooting for takedowns, throwing some big shots in the feet. That body kick could be huge for him as well, and just kind of gasses out Umar. And as the fight progresses, maybe even finds a finish. So I think I would favor Pantoja over Umar, to be honest. But that would be an interesting matchup. I haven't thought about it that much. Yeah, but for example, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably going to be. I don't know. It's probably going to be Merab versus. So, in my opinion, I think Merab is going to beat Corey Sandhagen. I'm pretty confident in that. So, if he does beat Corey Sandhagen, the next obvious guy is going to be Petr Yan. I get it that that Merab already beat Yan in a very dominant 50-45 decision, but still, I mean, he deserves it the most out of anybody else. Even if Umar beats Batista, like you don't give Umar the rematch that quickly. So I don't know. I personally think it's probably going to be Merab versus Petr Yan, and we'll see. We'll see how that one looks. Volk versus Merab is a great fight, but Volk would win. I actually think so. Yeah. I think moving up to 145 may be a little bit tough for Merab. And yes, his cardio is absolutely insane, but I do think that Volkanovski would do a good job at stopping takedowns and just get going. So probably I would agree with you, but who knows? Do you know interesting? The Umar thing or the Petr Yan? Perfect retirement for Volk, but that never happened. Yeah. What I hope for Volk though to do is fight what's it called? Fight Lerone Murphy, which it's seeming like that's going to be the next fight for him and for the belt at 145. So fight Lerone Murphy, beat Lerone Murphy, hopefully, and then after that, just retire. I think a lot of the other potential guys that are coming up could be dangerous matchups, and honestly, could be bad matchups for Volkanovski. I mean, I know Jean Silva lost, but I always had that thought that Jean Silva is like a very, very bad matchup for Volkanovski. So I really never want to see that matchup. And I guess because Jean lost, we're probably not going to see that matchup. But still, even other guys coming up, there's a lot of explosive strikers that are coming up and could potentially fight for the belt after Lerone Murphy. So I think those kind of guys, especially at this point in Volkanovski's career, are probably not great fights for him. So I would personally like to see him fight Lerone Murphy, hopefully win, and just retire from there. And if he loses, I think he should definitely retire as well. And I think if he loses, there's a good chance he retires. I think Merab beats Arman at 155. You think Merab beats Arman at 155? I wouldn't go that far. The cardio, I guess, could potentially play big, but I just think Arman would be way too big for Merab at that weight class. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess it would be interesting, probably. But what are you gonna do? Hey, guys, like yeah, honestly, that I could honestly see that being a reality. Where Rob's literally just beating everybody. Everybody's like, "Oh, move up, move up," but then somehow, not somehow. I mean, it's possible that Aljamain Sterling becomes a champ at 145, and then Rob just refuses to move up. I could see that as somewhat of a reality. Honestly, that'd be pretty funny. But yeah, who out of the current UFC champions, who do you think is going to be the champion for the longest out of everybody that's currently champ? It's kind of an interesting question because it's not even like a question of who's going to lose first. It's just a question of who's going to be at their weight class the longest and who's just going to continue to win. If I had to say, I'd probably say it's Tom Aspinall. The reason being is the heavyweight division sucks, for one. And for two, even if Tom Aspinall cleans out his division, which I think he probably will, there's no other division that he can move up to. Obviously, he can't move down. He's way too big to move down to light heavyweight. So he's really going to be stuck at the heavyweight division. So in my opinion, it's probably him. But there's definitely are some potential answers. Like for Ilia Topuria, it's definitely not Topuria. I do think he'll beat a lot of guys at lightweight. I just think he's only going to fight once. One more title defense and move up to welterweight. So I don't think it's him. So in my opinion, probably Tom Aspinall. You have to be you have to be humble. You have to be humble. What's going on, brother? Welcome to the stream. Chimaev. Yeah, I can see that as well. Honestly, that's probably a pretty good answer. I said going into the fight between Chimaev and Dricus, both of these guys are kind of head and shoulders over everybody else at the middleweight division. I do believe that. So after Khamzat was able to win the fight, I think any potential matchup he would have, he'd probably win. Imavov is most likely going to be the next challenger for Khamzat. And I think Khamzat beats Imavov and he probably submits him in the first round. And honestly, a lot of the other matchups, I just think Khamzat wins. The only kind of interesting matchup for Khamzat would be Dricus if he can make some significant changes, which who knows if he'll do. But really the main matchup that kind of interests me is Fluffy Hernandez versus Khamzat Chimaev, because there's a good chance, honestly, that Khamzat just finds a finish in the first round over Fluffy. But if he doesn't, and Fluffy's able to get going like he usually does in a lot of his fights, starting in round 2, 3, 4, potentially 5, it's going to be very difficult for Khamzat to keep up with that pace. So those are a couple matchups that I think are pretty interesting. But overall, I'd probably say Chimaev is going to be a champ for quite a bit. Uncle Tom, Uncle Ive's another one. We'll see. I mean, I do think Unk is going to beat Alex Pereira in the rematch. I think it's going to be a much different fight from what it looked like the first time, but I think he'll beat him. Could he beat Yuri? I mean, yeah, of course he could beat Yuri, but I think Yuri is an interesting matchup. And could he beat Khalil? Of course he could, but it's an interesting matchup. Could he beat Dominic Reyes? Yeah, he probably would beat Dominic Reyes, honestly. There's some interesting matchups. Probably the biggest threat to Uncle Ive, though, would be Yuri, if I had to say. But I could see him being a champ for a while, though. And Tom, yeah, I agree with. Chimaev and Aspinall, yep, I agree with that. Where are you from? From New York. I'm from New York. Chimaev is probably going to retire early, or he might just end the belt. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I kind of feel like Islam Makhachev, Khamzat Chimaev, and Ilia Topuria are kind of in a similar they're kind of in a similar spot where I think they're all very, very good. I mean, it's pretty clear that they're all very good, but I also feel like all three of those guys are probably going to retire relatively early. Definitely, I think that's the case for Islam Makhachev. I definitely think that's the case for Ilia Topuria, and most likely that'll be the case as well for Khamzat. So yeah, it's probably a good point. The only way that, or not the only way, but a potential way that Khamzat wouldn't be the longest reigning champ would be because he retired or something. O'Malley needs to finish in his next fight. Yeah, he does. He does. It's probably going to be Song Yadong, which should be against Song Yadong. Yeah, I agree. I think it probably is. There's too many rumors. Sean O'Malley himself said like he likes that fight. So I think that probably would be the fight. Is he going to finish Song Yadong? I'm not sure. I mean, Song has an amazing chin. And I think the power of Sean O'Malley is probably a little bit overrated. He has good power for 135, but it's probably a little bit overrated. But I do think Sean O'Malley will beat Song Yadong. I will say that. And it kind of puts him in a weird spot because if he does beat Song Yadong, it's a legitimate win, and Sean O'Malley would probably still be the number one contender. I don't know how he's the number one contender right now, but if he beats Song Yadong, he'll be the number one contender still. But obviously, you're not going to give him a title shot after that. So I don't know. He's kind of in a weird spot, to be honest. He could win like his next 2 or 3 fights, and he would not be worthy of getting another title shot. So he's in that weird spot, similar to what Max Holloway was, similar to what Robert Whittaker was, where he's good enough probably to be in the top 5, but he's not going to get a title shot anytime soon. He's going to really need to beat a lot of guys to get there. Your reaction to Jean Silva? So I said this, I posted this. I know I'm very high on Jean Silva, and I still am after the fight. Going into that fight, I said I was very confident that Jean Silva was going to win the fight. But going into the fight, I said one thing that does concern me is if Diego Lopez will be able to find a takedown. I didn't think it was super likely because Diego literally never shoots for takedowns. But if he was able to find a takedown, I thought it could be trouble for Jean Silva. And it was. In the first round, it was literally the worst situation possible. Diego Lopez had full mount on Jean Silva in the first round when they were dry and when Diego Lopez wasn't tired. So it was literally the worst scenario like possible. But after Jean Silva was able to get back to his feet, get out of that situation and get back to his feet, I was super confident he was going to win. And in round 2, he was winning. He was piecing up Diego Lopez. But obviously he just got over aggressive. I think the biggest issue for Jean Silva in round 1 and especially in round 2 is he legitimately just did not respect Diego Lopez at all. He just didn't respect him at all, and that cost him. There are certain fighters at 145 that he can do that against because he has such a great chin and because he is so physical. But against Diego Lopez, that's probably the worst guy in the division to do that against. Because Diego Lopez definitely has the best chin in the weight class and arguably one of the best chins in the UFC. It's insane. And for 2, he's very powerful. So obviously we saw that kind of bite Jean Silva. So that's my reaction on that fight. On another night, if they rematch, do I think Jean Silva can win? Yeah, I definitely do. But you know, they're probably not going to rematch ever, or at the very least for a long time. So that's kind of how the fight played out. But my opinions on Jean Silva do not change. I still think he's going to be a champion by the end of 2026. I still think he's very good. I still think there's a lot of matchups that I would favor him in at 145, and you know that will just come with time. I think whoever the UFC decides to match him up against next will probably find a finish. And he'll go from there. I think it's going to be a very similar situation to some other fighters that maybe got their hype derailed, but then quickly got right back on track. I think that's what we're going to see for Jean Silva. I know I'm definitely a Jean Silva glazer or whatever, but I just think he's very good. And I think he's going to be a champion. Just fought very not smart. I'll say that. Yes, they are. I don't remember what I was talking about. No Team Dong all day. Oh, Song Yadong. Yeah, I mean, Song Yadong's good. Song Yadong is good. He's boxing because I just feel like he has trouble. I mean, he had trouble with Corey Sandhagen when they fought. Just be kind of like the rangy striker, tricky striker that Corey Sandhagen is. And I kind of feel like Sean is a very similar fighter to that with more footwork, with more movement, I guess I should say. So I kind of feel like it would be difficult for Song Yadong to really track Sean O'Malley and land bombs. Usually when Song Yadong has his most success is when he's able to have you stand in front of him and he's able to trade with you and land big bombs. That's really where he has success, but Sean O'Malley's not going to do that. So I think stylistically it's probably kind of a difficult matchup for him personally. But we'll see. Who knows? I made a devil cash. Let's go. Umar against Sean O'Malley. I mean, Umar is fighting Batista, but if Umar beats Batista, which he probably will, do I think he should fight Sean O'Malley? Yeah, why not? You can put that matchup together, to be honest. I don't hate it. Yeah, they moved about Peter Yan for some reason. Umar lost and Peter Yan. So yeah, I don't get it. I really don't get the rankings at bantamweight. I think maybe lower than the top 5 is fine. But I think for the top 5, it should be number 1, Peter Yan, number 2, Umar Nurmagomedov, number 3, it should be Corey Sandhagen. Number 4, it should be Sean O'Malley. And number 5, it should be Song Yadong. I think that would make a lot more sense. The fact that Sean O'Malley lost his last 2 fights and he's still the number 1 contender, to me personally, makes no sense. But yeah, let's go, brother. Let's go. What's going on, brother? Welcome to stream. O'Malley has done enough to warrant that. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's a good point. I could see that. Imagine he goes up against Song Yadong in like a very close fight, but he kind of edges out the decision victory. And Dana hops on. He's like, Sean O'Malley's going up against Merab again. That'd be pretty funny. You can tell what fighters it reminds me of. Jean Silva is scary in all aspects. For now, happy we can't understand. It was weird seeing. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. I didn't really see a world where he would get KO'd, to be honest, because he has such a great chin. And even though he didn't get KO'd, but even though he got TKO'd, he still did show an amazing chin. I mean, he was coming into a spinning elbow from a very powerful striker in Diego Lopez, and the stoppage was good. Obviously, it was a good stoppage, but he wasn't like KO'd or anything like that, which, in my opinion, kind of shows how good of his chin is, and a big reason for why I think he's going to be so good. Talk about this a lot. I mean, some of you guys may get tired of me talking about it, but it's true. Physicality is super important, and when I look at guys that I think are going to become champions or prospects that I think are going to become very good, of course, skill set is a huge factor of that. But also a huge factor of that is physicality. And when I talk about physicality, I'm talking about your ability to take a shot as well as your ability to hit very hard. And with Jean Silva, like, he's literally that. He is very skilled as well. His striking is very good. We definitely saw that in the Diego Lopez fight in round 2. He was piecing up Diego Lopez in part because of his striking skill. But also on top of that, he's shown in the Lopez fight and even other fights, his chin is really, really good and he hits really hard. I mean, as good as Diego Lopez's chin is, Jean Silva did hurt him at a certain point in round 2 to an extent, and not too bad, but he did hurt him to an extent, which kind of just shows you how hard he hits. But yeah, I think he's going to be good. It's probably not that common of a belief right now. I know a lot of people are kind of hating on the Fighting Nerds at this point, and I don't know, maybe rightfully so. I mean, obviously they are very overconfident, I guess. But in my opinion, I still think the Fighting Nerds are going to be good. And I think Jean Silva's at the top of the list for me. I mean, just looking at a lot of potential matchups for him, I think he beats a lot of guys at the featherweight division. And we'll see who the UFC decides to give him in his next matchup. But I think he probably finds a victory, to be honest. If O'Malley gets the one crap win, yeah, honestly, that would be insane. I mean, obviously, a lot of people were complaining about Sean O'Malley even getting the rematch against Merab. I mean, he didn't fight. He lost to Merab, and then he didn't fight, and he got an instant rematch. When there's champions that have a bunch of title defenses, like DDP. I mean, DDP has a decent amount of title defenses, and he's not getting an immediate title shot, immediate rematch. So it's kind of insane that they gave it to Sean O'Malley like right away. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to give Sean another shot. I know Dana loves Sean, but I don't think they'll go that far at this point. Like, Sean would have to win realistically. I mean, maybe he'll get some preferential treatment, and maybe he only will need to win 2 or 3 more fights when he should need to win 4 or 5 to get another title shot. But I don't know. But like, if he wins 1 more fight and he gets a title shot, I don't know. I may just like not watch the fight. I mean, that would just be ridiculous. But hopefully not. It shows how good Diego's power is. I mean, Fire Wrestling is kind of, yeah. Yeah, it is true. I mean, listen, the physicality and power of Diego Lopez is very high, and that's a big reason why I was saying probably the game plan, if there was any, for Jean Silva wasn't amazing. Like, he can fight very reckless in all of his other fights, and obviously he had a lot of success finding all knockouts, and he could honestly be reckless against some of the higher level guys. I know a lot of guys are saying, you know, when Jean Silva is going up against top 5 fighters at featherweight, he can't be reckless because he's going to get knocked out, which it could be true for certain guys. I think it's definitely true for Diego Lopez, but for other guys, maybe. But for the most part, to be completely honest, I think because Jean Silva is so physical and so much more physical than anybody else, I think he actually could fight very recklessly against a lot of other guys. Like, for example, Volkanovski. Like, even if Jean Silva fights recklessly against Volkanovski and he gets countered a couple times, like, I don't really see Volkanovski finding a perfect counter shot and knocking Jean Silva out. Of course it's possible, but he just doesn't hit like nearly hard enough, in my opinion, to knock out a guy like Jean Silva. So, like, I don't know. I don't know if I really buy into that sentiment, but specifically in the Diego Lopez fight, I do agree. Like, he should not have been as reckless as he was going into such a dangerous fight like that one. But I would favor Max or Diego. I think he folds just to get your choice. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I personally don't think it would be the best idea for Diego Lopez to move up to 155. He can. He's definitely big enough. But I think a big reason for why Diego Lopez is so successful at 145 is in part due to his physicality, because of his great chin and because of his great power. And if he did move up to 155, both of those things are going to be tested a little bit more. Not saying that he can't have success there, because maybe he will be super physical even at that higher weight class, but it would be a little bit different. Like, guys hit harder at 155, and also they'll be able to take a shot a little bit better at 155. So you're kind of taking away some of the dangerous weapons that Diego Lopez has. Not saying he can't be good at 155, but I think, in my opinion, he's a better fighter at 145. But yeah, I if I had to say, I probably would say Max would beat Diego. And then for Justin Gaethje against Diego, I mean, I probably would lean with Diego Lopez, to be honest, because one takedown, one sort of slip or anything, it's over. Justin Gaethje has proven time in and time again, if he's on the ground against any like half good jiu-jitsu practitioner, he's going to get submitted. Gaethje literally doesn't know what he's doing at all on the ground. So because of that, I think I actually do lean with Diego Lopez. And then for Charles Oliveira, yeah, of course you could land a big shot. But that was a close fight, in my opinion. But as I said, I prefer him to stay at 145. Eddie KO, Sean could even do it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what he can do. So, I mean, the obvious next fight has to be against Song Yadong. I think that makes sense. Sean O'Malley versus Song. But if Sean does beat Song, just for the sake of argument, I don't really know who's going to fight. I mean, we'll see. There could be potential new up and comers or new contenders that come up by that point. So we'll see. Maybe there'll be more options or more clarity on that. But looking at the current top five or the current bantamweight division, there's not really an obvious next guy. If Umar loses to Batista, maybe you can do Sean O'Malley versus Umar. Maybe you could do that. And for Peter Yan, I've said this a couple of times. After Merab beats Corey Sandhagen, because I do believe he's going to beat Corey Sandhagen, I think it's going to be Peter Yan fighting next for the belt. I don't think he needs to fight again. He's already on a couple fight win streak, so it's probably going to be him fighting for the belt. And maybe if Yan loses to Merab, which I think he will, then maybe you could do the rematch between Sean and Yan. But honestly, it just puts Sean in a really weird situation where I think he can legitimately get like 2 additional wins, and he wouldn't deserve a title shot. So who knows? Maybe Sean O'Malley decides to fight Song Yadong. He wins, loses, whatever, and then maybe decides to move up to featherweight. I mean, he's pretty lanky and tall for bantamweight, so maybe he looks to put on some size and move up to 145. He's kind of in like a weird spot, honestly, at bantamweight. He'd probably beat Corey by decision, but then we're good. Yeah. Yeah, he's just in a bad spot. It's one of two things for Sean. It's either, or I guess one of three things, kind of. It's either he's willing to get a bunch of wins under his belt without getting a title shot, like legitimately getting 3 or 4 additional wins without getting a title shot, or he's going to try to wait for Merab to lose to somebody, and then I could see Dana White throwing Sean in an undeserving title shot, or Sean could just move up to 145. It's got to be one of those 3 options for Sean, but yeah, it's just like a weird spot for him, to be honest. They should have done O'Malley versus Yan 2 fight. The first fight was a robbery. I agree. The first fight was a robbery. Very surprised to see that scorecard, but it's honestly a common trend forever, but especially as of late, just these horrible scorecards. I mean, look how much like bad scorecards affect the sport. It's huge. You talk about Cyril Gane fighting Tom Aspinall. That should be Volkov. Volkov definitely beat Cyril Gane in that fight. So because the judges were so bad, now all of a sudden Cyril Gane's getting an undeserved title shot. You also look at Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg. Jan Blachowicz definitely beat Carlos Ulberg. And Jan Blachowicz should be fighting Dominic Reyes in a number 1 contender fight at this point. But instead, he's probably never going to get a title shot and probably nowhere near to a number 1 contender fight. So bad judging really affects the sport a lot, and it's very frustrating to see no changes being made in that sort of front. Now, obviously, I get it. It's kind of difficult. I mean, there's human error. There's always going to be bad judges or scorecards, but I just feel like the UFC or the scoring commissions are just not doing anything to make adjustments to their scoring. So it's annoying. We've seen a million robberies in the past. We'll definitely see a bunch going forward, and it doesn't seem like we're going to have any changes get made to that. Jean and Diego probably stiff. Yeah. Jean Silva versus Sean O'Malley is such a interesting fight. I mean, if Sean could stay on the outside and utilize footwork, maybe he could win like that. But if he's forced into any sort of a brawl with Jean Silva, he's getting knocked out. Diego Lopez probably beat Sean as well. I would agree with that. Like even on the feet potentially, but especially if he finds a takedown. Mofsar probably beat Sean. I could see Sean beating Mofsar in a weird world, but most likely Mofsar would win. And Vol could beat, yeah, I think Vol could beat Sean for sure, actually. So yeah, I guess it's just the only. So I see what you're saying. Like it doesn't even make sense for him to move up to 145 because he'll lose to a bunch of guys. But I don't know what the alternative is. Like to get 4 more wins or just wait for Merab to lose the belts. I don't know. Maybe you could do that. I thought Jan definitely beat Olberg. He definitely did. There's actually like no question about it. It's just very frustrating, to be honest. Because listen, especially for Jan, I mean, dude, he's like 40, whatever. He's never going to get a title shot ever again, and he should have got an opportunity at the very least to be in a number 1 contender fight against Dominic Reyes. And who knows? Maybe he could have beat Dominic Reyes. He is powerful. Who knows? So it's just very unfortunate for Jan Blachowicz that he was robbed in that fight, and now he's never going to get a title shot. And as I said, he's old. Like he's not going to get the opportunity. So bad judging is a real problem in the UFC. I did put a video together. It's very frustrating to me. So I put a video together talking about it, and that will be out next week. But well, next week, or is it? No, never mind. It's coming out tomorrow. It'll be out tomorrow. So yeah, it's frustrating. Jan was so good. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea. That was like the weirdest performance I've seen in a little bit. I think the weirdest performance I've ever seen in my life was Khamzat Chimaev versus DDP. Because going into that fight, I thought it could have went in one of 2 ways. I thought Khamzat will either submit DDP in the first 2 rounds and find a finish, or at the very least, maybe ground and pound shots and find a finish, or Dricus will survive and he'll find a finish late, or he'll win a decision. But the fact that Khamzat Chimaev won a decision victory in that fight, and a pretty boring fight, if we're being honest, was like the weirdest outcome I think I've ever seen. But also, the Glover beating Jan in the way that he beat him was so weird. And Jan just seemed like very off that night. I think if they ever were to rematch, I think Jan probably, maybe not at this point, Glover's retired, but maybe at a later point after that fight happened when Glover was still there, I think Jan probably would have won if they fought again. He just like looked very off on that night. It was kind of just like a weird performance. But yeah, Jan is very underrated. His boxing is very good, and also I think his wrestling, his offensive wrestling is solid. His defensive wrestling is terrible, if I'm gonna be honest. But his offensive wrestling is solid. His leg kicks are people forget, man. I think his leg kicks are probably the second best in the UFC. Number 1 is probably Alex Pereira. Number 2 is Jan Blachowicz. And Jan just does things very well. He's just a good fighter. And not to mention the power that he had. If Beneil had a chin, he might have been able to be top 3. Dude, I think there's a real chance that Beneil could have beaten, or at the very least been very competitive with Islam Makhachev. I don't know if you guys remember, but before Islam Makhachev became a champion, it was supposed to be Beneil Dariush versus Islam Makhachev. Now it turned out to be Islam versus Bobby Green, as hilarious as that sounds. But it was supposed to be him versus Beneil. And I think there's a real chance that Beneil could have won, or at the very least could have been competitive. Beneil is very, very good. I think he showed that in his Moicano fight. His jiu-jitsu is absolutely elite. His striking is not amazing, but he has decent power. But on the ground, this guy is like very elite. If you look back at his Gamrot fight, he showed it as well. He's a really good fighter. The problem with him is his chin isn't good, as you said. And if he's ever going to go up against somebody who's athletic and powerful, it's just probably not going to go well for him. If you look at his fight versus Charles Oliveira, it was exactly that. Charles is a very explosive and powerful striker. He found the knockout. And if you look at Arman Tsarukyan, similar thing. He's very explosive and powerful. He found the knockout. So those sort of guys are just going to be very difficult for Beneil Dariush. And I think because of that, especially now as he is getting older, he's never going to become a champ. And I don't think he's going to get that close at this point. But there was a point in a time where I thought he could have been competitive with Islam Makhachev. But it all comes down to his speed and his lack of a chin. His and Jan's performance this year. Yeah, that's fair. That is fair, though. Are you running for the cross? that would be tremendous. That'd be tremendous. They should make it the main event. Carlos Barza and Rose Namajunas. That'd be funny. Mikey, what's going on, brother? Or not what's going on? You've been here, but thanks so much, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks for the dono. I'll give you a heart for that one. But peace out, brother. Thanks for joining the stream. Thanks for the dono, and I'll see you in the next one. And once again, thanks for becoming a channel member. I really appreciate it. But yeah, Carla versus Rose 3 would be just tremendous. Bring Carla back. Is Carla retired? She is, right? Or am I tripping? I think she's retired. But that'd be hilarious. What do you guys think is actually going to be the main event, though, for the White House card? I have a feeling it's going to be Conor McGregor. I personally would prefer that it isn't Conor McGregor. I mean, for a card of that stature, I would prefer it to be like a higher level or higher caliber of fight. But it seems like at this point, it's still super early. A lot of things can change. But it seems like at this point, it's going to be Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler or Conor McGregor versus somebody else. I don't know, for the main event of the White House card. But we'll see. We'll see. I think there's a chance we could see John Jones versus Tom Aspinall on that card. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's just still so early. There's a lot that could change between now and then in terms of who's the champion, in terms of who are legitimate up-and-comers. And I think a big issue for the UFC and a big problem for them is at this point, there's not really many legitimate American fighters that are champions. Well, obviously, there's no American champions at this point, at least in the men's weight classes. And also, there's not like any Americans that are all that close to becoming a champion either, to be honest. That you could throw on the White House card. Like the closest guy that can get a title shot at this point is probably Sean Brady. But are you really going to do like JDM versus Sean Brady or Islam Makhachev versus Sean Brady for the main event of the UFC White House card? It just doesn't make any sense, in my opinion. So they're kind of in a weird spot at this point. So because of that, they may just go with the big star, throw Conor McGregor on the card, and have him go up against Michael Chandler. The fight itself will probably be pretty fun, and Michael Chandler's an American, so I don't know. It may be Kayla fight. They're going to want an American champion. Yeah, but like that can't be the main event, though. I think Kayla's probably going to be on the card. Most likely, actually. Maybe you'll do Kayla versus what's her face, Amanda Nunes for that White House card. Maybe they'll save it for that one. I could see that as being a co-main event. And honestly, like I criticize women's MMA a lot, but I legitimately think that fight specifically, that fight and probably that fight only, is actually a really good fight. So if that's a co-main event for the White House card, I think that makes sense. And if you have the main event for that card being Tom Aspinall versus John Jones, I think that actually kind of is a good main and co-main event and a good compromise considering the lack of American champions. But we'll see what they decide to do. If it's Conor McGregor as the main event, then I don't know. We'll see. And also the issue with Conor, if he is the main event, like, are you really going to throw John Jones versus Tom Aspinall as the co-main event and not sort of a card if they do add that fight to it or any other title fight? I don't know. It's just, we'll see. I guess I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do. But I think Kayla probably will be on that card, if I had to say, at this point. But at the same time, like the Kayla fight versus Amanda Nunes is White House worthy, not the main event, but the co-main event. But there is a lot of time between now and between July of next year. So, or maybe I think the card's actually going down in June of next year. I think it's June, but either way, there's a lot of time between now and then. So, I don't know. I don't know if Kayla or Amanda Nunes are going to want to wait that long before they fight next. So we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do. But yeah, for the rest of this month, of course, we have no card tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Saturday, which is unfortunate. But we do next weekend. We do have the UFC Perth card that we were talking about before, which is pretty solid. We'll see how Dominic Reyes does. Hopefully, he's able to find a win for the boys. But yeah, aside of that, that's kind of what we have for this month, and going into next month. That's really where we have the exciting fights. We have UFC 320, Oliveira versus Fiziev, which is a really, really good fight night. Then we have DeRitter versus Brandon Allen. It sucks that Fluffy's out, but still, that fight is tremendous. And then after that, we have UFC 321. So October is really the month to be an MMA fan. This month has been like, all right, it's not terrible, but it's just all right. But next month is really when we get good fights. There will probably be a couple American champions by then. Yeah, that's kind of what the UFC is hoping for, I would assume. It's just at this point, like, I don't see who it would be. Like, I don't personally think Sean Brady is going to be a champion. I just don't think stylistically a lot of the guys at the top are good matchups for him. But even if he was, like, that's not really an exciting American champion, if we're being honest. And outside of him, could Max Holloway be a champion at lightweight? I guess technically he would be considered. Yeah, maybe Max Holloway could be a champion. I think Armin's probably going to be a champion if Taporia does move up. Um, but could Max be there? Maybe. Or could he at the very least contend for a belt? Maybe. Um, at flyweight, Joshua Van could maybe be. Well, he's not from the US. Maybe it could be. Yeah, there's nobody. There's nobody at flyweight. At bantamweight, Sean O'Malley's not going to be the champ. Corey's not going to be the champ. So yeah, there's really nobody at bantamweight. At featherweight, there's Aljamain Sterling, but I don't know. I don't think he'll be champ. Besides him, there's like nobody. Lightweight we talked about, welterweight we talked about. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, listen, a lot of things could change. There could be guys that aren't perceived to be that good at this point, but they could, make quick runs to the belt and at the very least contend or compete for the belt. So we'll see what happens between now and then. But yeah, what fights are you guys most excited about coming up? Or which fights and which cards? For me personally, I think the card that I'm most excited about is UFC 322, JDM versus Islam Makhachev. I know a lot of people were talking about how we really want to see Islam versus Ilya, and I agree. I really want to see that fight, and it's unfortunate that we're not getting it, at least at this point. There's still a possibility we'll get it in the future, but at this point, we're not. But I still think JDM and Islam Makhachev is an absolute super fight in a vacuum, and I think people are forgetting how good that card is. And honestly, I do think UFC 322 is a good card overall.
Your mom's a fun card.
Because even besides JDM and Islam Makhachev, you also have Whaley and Shevchenko, which is fine. It's not amazing, but it's fine. Then you have Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates, which I think is actually an excellent fight. And then there's some fights that have been added to the card, but probably most of these fights are not going to be main card fights. I mean, you have G-Rod and Roman Kopylov, which could be on the main card, and I think that's a banger of a fight. Then you have Bo Nick on the card, so that's interesting. Gerald Meerschaert versus Kyle Dawkins is kind of interesting. Sisher Kayev is on the card versus Mechanico, who's absolutely terrible. I don't know. They're obviously going to add more fights to the card, but in my opinion, UFC 322 and JDM versus Islam specifically is the biggest card and biggest fight that I'm looking forward to. I want to see Pereira beat Uncle I, but I don't care if he'd be able to. Yeah, so I put out a video, or no, I didn't put it out yet, but I will put it out next week talking about that specific fight. But basically my thoughts on that fight is I do think the rematch between Alex and Uncle Ive is going to look very different than what it looked like the first time. The first time Pereira was kind of just on the back foot the whole time, and he wasn't really putting out all that much volume, and obviously it didn't work out for him. So I do think Pereira is going to make the adjustments, going to stay on the front foot and start to try to land leg kicks, body jabs, right hands over the top, and of course that signature left hook. I just think he kind of puts himself in a more dangerous sort of a fight, though, because people forget that Uncle Ive is more of a counter striker out there. So if Pereira's pressuring and if he's throwing a lot of volume at Uncle Ive, that would just give more opportunities for Uncle Ive to snipe Pereira and find a counter shot. So overall, I agree with you. I'm certainly rooting for Alex Pereira. I definitely love his game, and he's done a lot for the sport in as short of a time as he's been here. And it would be, there'd be nothing better than a signature Pereira left hook or a head kick or something like that knocks out Uncle Ive. But I think at this point, whether Uncle Ive's on the front foot or whether Pereira's on the front foot, I just feel like Uncle Ive's going to be able to find the victory one way or the other. So yeah, it just seems like a tough stylistic matchup for Alex. I know a lot of people were talking about, Alex is avoiding the wrestlers, he's avoiding the grapplers. If we're being honest, like Uncle Ive is not really much of a wrestler. Yes, he's a better wrestler than Pereira is, and yeah, he's probably a better wrestler than other guys at that weight class for sure. But we saw Pereira was able to stop all the takedowns in their first fight. I don't think it would be very different in their second fight at all. So it's not the wrestling; it's a speed and the countering ability from Uncle Ive that I think can give Pereira some issues. But well, we'll see. We'll see. That fight is not too far away from where we are now. Just a couple weeks. Not next week and the weekend after that. So I'm excited for that card. And honestly, the rest of the card is looking tremendous. Merab versus Corey Sandhagen. Talked about it before. I definitely lean with Merab to win this fight. Honestly, I don't think Corey has that much of a chance in this one. We'll see. I could be wrong, but I heavily favor Merab in this one. And then you have Yuri versus Roundtree. That's probably going to be the best fight on the card. Both of those guys are usually never in boring fights, especially Yuri Prohaska. And it's going to be a good fight. I think whoever lands first in that matchup probably wins. And then you have Josh Emmett versus Yusuf Zalal. I know Zalal's last performance kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's minds, a lot of fans' minds. But in my opinion, I think Yusuf Zalal is a really good fighter. And I like this step up in competition here against Josh Emmett. I would like to see the UFC try to push Yusuf Zalal a little bit more. I mean, it's been a while since he fought last, and it's good to see him get back in there, and hopefully we'll see how he does. Then you have Joe Pyfer versus Abus fighting for the last spot of the main event, or the main card, I should say. So that's probably going to be a good one as well. Probably the first round of that fight is going to be insanely good. Abus has like no gas at all after round one, but in the first round, he's usually pretty good. And for Joe Pyfer, he does have decent cardio, but that he's also really good in the first round and is very powerful. So I think round one between Abus and Pyfer is going to be good. But overall, I think Pyfer is going to figure it out and land a big shot on Abus and finish him. Also on the card, you have Gauthier and Ozzy Diaz. This is definitely a tailor-made fight for Gauthier. The UFC is really doing a good job with a couple of these guys, a couple of these very talented prospects. They're doing a good job at kind of bringing them along slowly, and Gauthier is definitely one of those examples. I think Gauthier is the real deal. I think he has the goods, but the UFC is doing a good job at moving him along slowly. We've seen countless times in the past prospects that look really good that were just pushed a little bit too fast, and all of a sudden they lose all their confidence, and they're never the same after that. So I do like to see what the UFC is doing with Gauthier. And as I said multiple times, I made a video about it. I think Gauthier is probably going to become a champion. Well, I don't want to say that. I don't know if he's probably going to become a champion, but he's probably going to become like a top 5 fighter at the middleweight division. I think he is very good, and who knows, maybe he can also become a champion. Then you have Shabazian versus Muniz on the card, which is fine. Basharat versus Chris Gutierrez, which is fine. Patchy Mix is on the early prelims, so we'll see how he looks. Obviously, Patchy looked absolutely horrible in his UFC debut, but we'll see how he does against a much lower level opponent here. And also, we'll see if his first performance was just UFC jitters or it's just not good. We'll see. We'll see. But I think the card overall for UFC 320 is good. Is it like jaw-dropping like some of the other cards we've seen in the past? No, it's not jaw-dropping, but I think it is really good. The main card's good, the prelims are good, and I think it has a really good chance to over-deliver on the night of the fight. And yeah, well, we'll see how that one plays out. But what about Movsar? I'll throw a comment up here. But what about Movsar? Has he not got a title fight this year? Yeah, it's very unfair how the UFC is treating Movsar at this point. Obviously, he deserves a title shot at this point. I mean, he's fought so many guys, and I thought even before the Aljamain Sterling fight, he should have got a title shot. But especially after the Aljamain Sterling fight, he definitely should have gotten a title shot. So it's unfair what they're doing to him. But at this point, like, because he kind of had a number one contenders fight against Aaron Pico, and because he had to pull out, I don't think the UFC is going to reward him. Obviously, they've never rewarded him in the past after he deserved a title shot. So after they kind of gave him an opportunity, like sort of, and he had to pull out, like the UFC is not going to do him any favors. So yes, he deserves a title shot, but he's not going to get it. Unfortunately for him, I think probably what they're going to make him end up doing is he's probably going to have to fight one more guy. And then the UFC will give him a title shot if he wins that fight. But yeah, it's unfair. It's definitely unfair. But I guess Movsar has a good attitude about it, where he's kind of just saying, "I'll fight anybody," and he'll fight as many times as he needs to, and before he gets that title shot. But yeah, he deserves it. He definitely deserves it. But yeah, then after UFC 320, we have Oliveira versus Fiziev. This card's good. By the way, what do you boys think of Oliveira versus Fiziev? Who do you think is going to win? I know a lot of people are on both sides. I'm personally on Charles Oliveira. I do get the criticism that Charles is coming back way too soon after he got knocked out by Topuria. And it does make sense. I mean, I'm sure his chin is going to be a lot softer than it would normally be. And in general, I mean, once you get knocked out that badly, your chin is going to be softer in general, but especially coming back so quickly, it's going to be softer. But I just think stylistically, it's a good matchup versus Fiziev. And although Fiziev is a good fighter, he's not that dangerous, if we're going to be honest. Like if he lands a spinning wheel kick or something like that, yeah, he'll knock out Charles Oliveira. But, you know, with his boxing ability, with his right hand or something like that, I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to knock out Charles. So we'll see. We'll see how that matchup turns out. But I think stylistically, it's probably a pretty good fight for Charles. I'm really worried about the chin. He's never had the best chin. Yeah, I agree. And obviously, he's coming back on short notice, so it's even more something more to worry about. But I agree with that sentiment, and obviously, yeah. But as I said, I just don't think Fiziev is the most powerful guy in the world. So if Charles did need to come back against somebody, I think Fiziev is not a bad matchup for him because of the power that Fiziev has or doesn't have. Um, I always thought Fiziev probably is a 145er. He's a little bit small for 155. So there's that. But also, as I was kind of touching on before, stylistically, I just think it's a good fight for Charles. We saw it in the Gaethje fights where Fiziev kind of has a little bit of trouble when his opponents come to him and he's forced to fight in the pocket. So similar to what Justin Gaethje was able to do, I think Charles is even better in the pocket than Justin Gaethje. So if the fight is held at that sort of a range, I think Charles is just going to go to work, land elbows, land uppercuts, land knees to the body. There's going to be a lot of different weapons that Charles Oliveira can go to in that sort of a fight. And even if they are at range, it is actually going to be dangerous for Charles because ironically, Fiziev is a better fighter at range than in close. But even at range, what Charles can do very effectively is utilize that front kick to the body. He does that really well in a lot of his fights. And I think specifically in this matchup, it would be huge because Fiziev has also proven that he doesn't have an amazing gas tank. So the longer the fight goes, the better it is for Charles Oliveira. And yeah, as I said multiple times, I just think it's a good stylistic matchup for Charles, but we'll see. Of course, you always have to be worried about that chin. Who knows? I mean, it could just take one shot. Even if Fiziev isn't the hardest puncher at 155, it could only take one shot and Charles can get knocked out. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I think it's probably a good matchup for him, but only time will tell what does end up happening. But besides that main event, we have Figueiredo and Montel Jackson. I actually think that's a very underrated fight on the card. Figueiredo is, I mean, obviously he's always in relatively fun fights, and Montel Jackson's a really underrated fighter in my opinion. The problem about Montel Jackson is he just doesn't fight really all that often, which is unfortunate. But I guess this year he's a little bit more active as this is going to be his second fight of the year. Usually he just fights once a year, if even. But this year he's going to fight twice, or at least he's scheduled to fight twice, and the second fight is against Figueiredo. So we'll see. We'll see how that fight looks, but that should be pretty fun. Deans versus Pinto, it's probably going to be an okay fight. Ponzinibbio versus Vicente Luque, probably two guys that are washed, if we're being honest, but we'll see how that one looks. Actually, I mean, I think Luque actually is coming off a pretty big win, right? I know he got submitted by Kevin Holland. Never mind. Then on the prelims, do we have anything interesting? We have Petrino fighting at heavyweight. He looks like a better fighter at heavyweight. So that could be interesting. Bonfim, as we talked about before, he's going to be on the card. Volter Walker versus Muhammad Usman is a hilarious fight, actually. But Volter Walker, I think, is probably going to find a heel hook once again, to be completely honest. He's done it to so many guys at heavyweight, and I've talked about this a lot, but there's a lot of fighters at the heavyweight division that just don't know what a heel hook is. And because of that, Volter Walker is able to take advantage of that and just heel hook everybody. And I think Muhammad Usman is going to be one of those guys that just doesn't know what a heel hook is, and he's going to get a heel hook. I really think that's going to happen. So that's an interesting fight on that card. And outside of that, yeah, maybe nothing too special as of yet, but there'll probably be at least one more big fight added to that Rio card. But I think it's probably going to be pretty fun. And the card after that, yeah, it does suck that we're missing out on RDR versus Fluffy, but RDR is still in the card, and we have RDR versus Brennan Allen, which could be an interesting fight for sure. And we'll see. We'll see how that one plays out. And yeah, there's some other good fights in the card. Mike Malott versus Kevin Holland is an interesting one. Danny Barlow's in the card. Could be interesting. Davey Grant versus Charles Jourdain. Actually, I think that's a fun fight. Matt Favola versus Kyle Nelson is interesting. Yeah, there's some decent fights on that Brennan Allen card. And obviously, for these cards, for these pay-per-views coming up, for these fight nights coming up, there's a lot that the UFC is going to add to these cards, or not to every card, but there's certain cards that are going to add some significant fights too. So obviously, they're not done yet, and hopefully we'll get some big name additions, big name fights added to some of these cards. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah. Anyways, I guess this is a little bit of a slower day for the boys, which I get. But if you guys have any questions, be sure to let me know in chat. I'll be answering any one of your questions, whether it's for next weekend's card in Perth, if it's for any upcoming card, or just any question about MMA in general. I'll be sure to answer. But if not, I think I'm going to hop off stream at this point. Thanks so much for everybody for joining the stream. Thanks so much for all the questions. Special thank you for Mikey for the donation, as well as becoming a channel member. And if any of you guys are interested in becoming a channel member, be sure to hit that join button. There's a lot of perks involved in that, which are listed down there. But members only live streams, priority provided comments, alongside with other perks as well. But anyways, if there's no more questions, I think I'll hop off stream at this point. I appreciate everybody for being here. I'll see you boys tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time. But until then, peace out, fellas.